The sovereignty of our nation is challenged. The time has come to take a proactive stance. We must ensure that we have the leadership and the commitment.
Hey, and welcome to today, where we have a couple things that well, sorry, not a couple things. We have a lot of videos that I'm going to be covering today, all in conjunction with each other. But before we get into that, because I'm going to jump straight into this topic, because there's a lot of things to cover, there's a little bit of little doodads going on as well, and we're gonna take a quick look at those things, because apparently, because I don't keep up with dates, I'll hand on the Bible, I will tell y'all, I don't know a lot about the dates going on in this country at all. I don't pay attention to dates that much. The only dates I know of are Christmas and birthday, and those are the only two dates that I keep in my brain. I'm like, that time. But apparently, it is also Flag Day. Flag Day is coming up. When is it coming up?
And what better way to do it than raising the flag? This Saturday is, in fact, Flag Day.
I didn't know this was a day, to be completely frank. I guess the more you know, but Flag Day is coming up, and though to jump ship from this, there's a cool little video here that I wanted to cover from somebody who goes by Michael Barrett, talking to the NDP Liberals wanting carbon tax Carney in, and there's just a little thing I want to just cover, because it colored me funny to hear it in the first time I listened to it. Here, take a listen to this.
In the latest conflict of interest from a government of serial ethical lawbreakers, the Prime Minister wants his buddy Mark Carbon Tax Carney's company to be in charge of $10 billion of Canadians' pension dollars. Now, he doesn't want him to be subjected to any of the conflict of interest rules. All the power, all the money, none of the accountability. After 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time is up for Carbon Tax Carney and this Prime Minister. Why don't they just call a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Another week, another tired line from the Conservatives. When it comes to Canadians who disagree with their vision of the country, instead of allowing for that disagreement to happen, they attack them personally and try to bring them down. We have seen this time and time again from Conservatives, whether it's the news media like CBC or CTV, or whether it's eminent Canadians who give of themselves. The Conservatives only have one objective, and that's to tear down Canadians who don't share their beliefs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Can we just take a quick second to listen to Chrystia Freeland there? I think that's Chrystia Freeland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Good answer. Do you want a gold star to go with that? Do you want a gold star to go with that? Michael Barrett just said, hey, you guys have been crushing Canadians with taxes, and this lady came up and said, oh, how dare you throw these accusations at us? She said nothing of value, and then Chrystia Freeland just comes up behind and says, good answer. Do you want a gold star with that as well? She talked about nothing that he brought up. She just tone policed him. That is what she did. She just tone policed him, and then Chrystia Freeland comes in with her 10 cents. Good answer. What a buffoon. Now on a more pressing bit of news here, and this is in line with what is happening, because it talks about the Americans. There's gonna be a lot of covering on this post, but there's a lot of files that are gonna be declassified. Stay tuned for that, because that'll be interesting. I probably won't cover it because I can't, but I tell you, that is looking to be a hefty declassification there. But why do I say this is in conjunction? Well, because it's talking about Americans, or, more importantly for today's topic, it is bringing up things that Trump is doing. That he is now going to be tariffing steel. Now, it is not specific. Now, I want to make this very clear. He's not saying he's going to be tariffing Canada. However, it is quite implied, heavily implied. It is heavily implied that Canada is in lieu of this, but it is not specifically Canada that he is tariffing. He's just saying tariffing aluminum that is not made in America. Here, let's take a quick listen to the video to see how heavily implied it is, okay?
Protecting our steel and aluminum industries is a must, and today I'm simplifying our tariffs on steel and aluminum so that everyone can understand exactly what it means. It's 25% without exceptions or exemptions, and that's all countries, no matter where it comes from. So if it's made in the United States, there is no tariff. All you have to do is make it in the United States. We don't need it from another country. As an example, Canada, if we make it in the United States, we don't need it to be made in Canada. We'll have the jobs. That's why Canada should be our 51st state.
Now, as I stated, heavily implied. I did not lie when I said that. Now, good news, guys, good news. This won't be an issue for Canadians. And you want to know why? Because as Mark Carney said earlier, we don't use steel. Can you even tell me where a steel thing is that you buy? We don't use steel.
And secondly, what we're going to do is make sure not that the government pays, not that we as taxpayers pay, but the large polluters pay. And so what happens...
But does that not ultimately trickle down?
No, because what the big companies are producing, by and large, are not products that we are consuming. There's some element of that, but by and large, you know, a steel company, how much steel are you using these days, Todd? I mean, not as much we used to.
So look at that, ladies and gentlemen. Canadians will have no problem with Trump's tariffs on their steel, because we don't use steel. It is all the big production companies, you know, the companies that are creating that terrible carbon. Pooey, that terrible carbon. All those companies, they're gonna feel the steel problem, not the rest of Canadians. It's not at all gonna have a down trickle effect at all. It's just the big companies. As Mark Carney over here seems to just really like to jump that horse, doesn't he? He likes to he just jumps it completely over, you know. Don't worry, Canadians, we won't have to deal with this steel tariff, because it's only the big companies that have to deal with it. Now, on a more pressing subject here, we have ourselves Pierre Poilievre coming out with his own statement against the tariffs as well, and it's definitely not my favorite response, and we'll take a look at that.
On President Trump's remarks yesterday, let me be clear, Canada will never be the 51st state. We are a proud, sovereign, and independent country. We are a patriotic people, and we will defend our future and our independence. Second, he has threatened to bring in tariffs on our steel and aluminum. We will retaliate in kind with matching tariffs on American aluminum and steel, all of the proceeds of which will be given back to our steel and aluminum industry, and any surplus will be given in tax relief for our people.
Back at it again with talking about retaliatory tariffs. This is utterly insane. This is utterly insane to keep on hearing retaliatory tariffs, and especially hearing it more and more from Pierre Poilievre. It is frustrating to hear, frustrating to listen to, frustrating to understand how utterly nullified the Canadian voice is here, because we saw the graph on the Canadian dollar stock that happened day of tariffs. It dropped, it plummeted. And here we have Pierre Poilievre talking about retaliatory tariffs again, even though it has been blatantly shown that they don't matter. They don't matter. And yet, trying it again. And even more kind of annoying, what do I mean kind of annoying? Even more annoying, obnoxiously annoying, is we have more conservative leaders coming out and saying more or less the same thing. In particular, we're seeing Stephen Harper say this. Stephen Harper says Canada should accept any level of damage to fight back against Donald Trump. This talk of fighting back, guys, I talked about this. I talked about a potential conflict between the two countries, and I don't like how our politicians are continuing to drive us closer to that continually. They don't seem to stop with the term retaliatory or talking about fighting back. With the amount that I am against us retaliating against Americans, I am almost predicting that someone at some point will come in and say that I'm an American asset. I will almost guarantee you that one, because I don't understand what it is about our politicians and liking to talk about fighting back, retaliation, and conflict. And more importantly, Ruby Dhalla gets exactly to where I'm thinking we're headed. I just don't like, I don't like how she's talking or like what she's talking about. But she is most certainly on the same line of thinking that I'm on with the whole entire retaliation stuff that is all happening, the tariffs that are happening, the conflict that is happening, all of that is leading somewhere, and she is getting right to the heart of it with what she has stated quite recently. Actually, as of today at 8 o'clock in the morning. Let us check it out.
As these global threats emerge and the sovereignty of our nation is challenged, the time has come to take a proactive stance. We must ensure that we have the leadership and the commitment to invest in our military and our defense. The national security and protection of our country simply cannot wait. We must secure our border, defend our nation, and fight for the Canada we all love.
I tell you, it is dastardly to see this kind of messaging happening in connection with the tariffs. I don't like that. Overall, I like the message of beefing up our military. I like that message a lot. It is great messaging. We needed to do that oodles and oodles and oodles of years ago. But now we're doing it. I mean, it's better to start at some point than never, but I mean, I don't like how it's in connection with the tariffs, because that kind of conflict is not something that needs to be promoted. It doesn't need to be promoted. I cannot say that any louder. I can't. I simply cannot state that any louder. But I like how she at least has a solution to this rather than just silly retaliatory tariffs. Silly tariffs. Those are silly. They did nothing when we threatened them the first time. They did absolutely nothing. We turned our put our tail between our legs the first time within 48 or so hours. So they're not gonna work again. They didn't work the first time, not gonna work the second time. Canadians are just gonna feel the brunt of the economic collapse, and that's all that is gonna happen, because the politicians just don't seem to care, because if they did, they'd actually have a proper solution. Kinda like Ruby Dhalla is giving, which is actually being a force to kind of reckon with by beefing our military. I don't like this in connection with the tariffs. I will state that again. I don't like it being in connection, because the last thing we need is that kind of conflict. But I do appreciate how she is talking about it. And I do agree with her talking about it, because it is pertinent, because it is quite obvious as to where the politicians are leading us in this whole entire conflict. It is blatantly obvious. And I am happy that Ruby Dhalla is actually talking about a solution to that a partial solution to that kind of conflict by actually beefing up our military. That is a messaging that Canada has needed for so long already, because our country isn't a country to reckon with. Blatantly obvious, because we can't even economically support ourselves, but blatantly obvious in the fact that we're just being pushed over is what is happening. We're just being pushed over. Now, I will say, closing the statement in today's video, Pierre has came out recently with his own video that I may or may not go over, I don't know. But he is talking about building our military, but for the Arctic. I'm a little bit perplexed as to why specifically the Arctic. Why not just Canada in general, just beefing up the military in Canada in general? Why specifically the Arctic? I don't know, but he is talking about beefing up the military, which is, once again, overall a good thing and a needed thing of Canada. I do appreciate that kind of talk, because it actually means something for Canadians, and that we are being protected from outside forces, be it China, Russia, or hopefully not, America. We do need protection. We obviously need protection. But I will say, I don't like his messaging in converse to Ruby Dhalla just saying, we need a stronger military. That is a much better messaging than, we need a stronger military for the Arctic. Why specifically the Arctic? Why not just Canada, point blank, period? I don't know. I don't get it. Seems a little bit, once again, edging the problem. Something that Pierre seems to like doing, which is edging the conversation, which I don't like. I don't like it. I like Ruby Dhalla getting to the point. I like it. It's good. And she's actually talking about solution. Something that Mark Carney is certainly not doing, because he doesn't even understand that we use steel. And something that Pierre isn't talking about, because he's talking about tariffs or retaliatory tariffs that did once again nothing the very first time. Did nothing. And yet we're talking about it again. Why? What he should be talking about is how if we got rid of the carbon tax, then the tariff tax would basically go moot because of how much we're being taxed on carbon. But for some reason he doesn't talk about that point that he has. He's rather talking about the point of retaliation when that isn't needed. That isn't needed. We could just get rid of the carbon tax and then just deal with the steel tariff. Could just deal with it, because it was basically balance out with how much money is being taken from us. Sure, it's a bit, it is a bit, what is the term, hyperbolic what I'm stating here, but you get the point I'm saying. We spend so much money on carbon tax. If we just got rid of that, the tariffs would be a lot lighter on the load. But, anywho, that is where I'm going to leave off today's video. Tell me what you guys are thinking down below. But otherwise, I hope to see you in the next video. But until then, I hope that you have a good one.